Here's the plate.
Okay, thank you to everyone for joining. We're going to start with the Siyum, and what an appropriate way to honor our dear friend, Mr. Herschel Zoberg, and finished all the Mishnayos of Shas, all the Mishnayos, something that Herschel spent many years studying, learning, reviewing, and it should all be a merit for him. First we're going to learn the Mishnah together, and after that we make the Siyum where we say that we should all return to the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, the 6 books, and with that in mind, we have over here a sign-up sheet for the yard site to learn again, review Mishnayos in his merit. As well as I'll be starting a shir on Sunday evenings, 8:30. Details to be posted, and Mishnayos shir also in his schus, and everyone's encouraged to attend. So the last Mishnah in Uktim says, Rabbi Shua ben Levi says, Asir HaKadosh Baruch Hu lahanchil l'chol tzadik v'tzadik shloish me'os v'asar elamos. In the future, Hashem will bequeath, will give to all the righteous people, all the righteous men, 310 worlds. This is the last Mishnah in Shas, where after someone has learnt and studied these Mishnayos, the Mishnah is telling us the reward that there is for someone who has studied Mishnayos, and that is 310 worlds. Shenemar lahanchel oihava yesh v'oitzreiseyam amale. Hashem says that to those that love me, I will give them yesh. They will have something. They will have something real. And the numerical value of yesh is 310. The message is that the reward for people who study the Mishnayos, for the tzaddikim, is something real. 310 times anything in this world, but the message is it's something real. It's yesh, and that's something that Herschel understood well. That what's real, what has value. Amar Rav Shimon ben Chalaf, the Mishnah goes on to say, "Lemata Kadosh Baruch Hu Kli Machzik Bracha Yisrael Ela Shalom." There's no kli, no vessel that can hold bracha. The only way that there's blessing is with peace. Shenamar Hashem Oz Lamo Yitain Hashem Yivarach Amo Vashalom. When Hashem gives His nation might, He gives the bracha of peace. In order to have any blessing, in order for any blessing to stand, you need to have shalom. You need peace in order for it to remain. And that's something again that Herschel practiced. He was a man of might, a man of ois. He was strong, but at the same time, he was always was very careful about keeping shalom. Hadron Allah Shisha Sidrei Mishnah v'Hadra Chalon. Daitan Allah Shisha Sidrei Mishnah v'Daitan Chalon. Loy Nisna Shtemi Nafel Shisha Sidrei Mishnah v'Nisna Shtemi Non. Loy v'Almodein Loy v'Almodasi. Harav No Adin Noy Eloheinu Zdivrei Zeras V'Finu V'Fiyos Amcha Beis Yisrael V'Niyeh Kulanu Anach V'Tetzayin V'Tetzay Amcha Beis Yisrael Kulanu Yoydei Shemecha V'Mdei Sartzecha L'Shma Me'Oivei Techakmeinu Mitzvaysecha Kil Oilam Hili B'Sam V'Chulkecha L'man Le'Evoish Lo'Olam Lo Yeshkach V'Gudecha Kivam Chisani Baruch Hatoah Adonai Olam Dei V'Chulkecha Amen 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 Tzalavad Moedim Anach L'Fanecha Adonai Eloheinu V'Le'Av V'Seinu Shesamto Chalkenu Miyoshvei Beis HaMedrash V'Loi Miyoshvei Koronis שאנו משקיעים והם משקיעים אנו משקיעים לדברי תורה והם משקיעים לדברון בתהילה אנו המלם והם המלם אנו המלם קם סוחר והם המלם והם קם סוחר אנו רוצים והם רוצים אנו רוצים לחיים ומבוא והם רוצים לבר שחס שנאמר ועשו להם שרידים לבר שחס אנשי דומו מירמו ליחצו לימיהם ואני אפתח בו ירצון פנח אדוני אלוהי כשם שזרתן וסיים שישי סדרי משנה כן תזינו הסל ספר מלכם וסיימון ללמוד ולמד לשמר ולעשות לקיים כל דברי סלמו פרסך באהבה וזכות כל התנועים ותלמידי חכמים הנזכרים בשש סדרי משנה תעמלי לזרי שלא תמר שתר ופי זרי וזר זרי עד אלום וקוים בי סלח לתן כל איסוך בשוך תשמר לך והקיצוי סהי ססיכך כי ירבו ימך ויוסיפו לך שנת חיים אורך יום מימינו ושמאלו אוי שבכבוד אדוני אוי למה ייתן אדוני יברך את המועד השלום כדי להתקדש מרבו וילמד הוא עושה לסתר דוסו לחיום המסיו עשו כיוסי מחיומו ובבני קר תדושלם ושכלו החלי בגבי ומקר פולחון ונוכרו מן הרו ועשוך פולחון השמי לעשרי ימלך קודשו בריחו ומבוסי די קורא וחייכון וימיכון וחי דחו בעיס ישראל ועגלו בזמן קורא ורומי Shabbat is Varvis Ramam Bisnasei, Visador, Visalev, Visalosh, Mary Guchav Richu, Yelom and Kobri Chazav Shirasot, Tushkosov, Nechmosov, Ramam, Ramen, Al Yisrael, Rabbanon, Val Tamidei, Vakol Tamidei, Vakol Madaskim by Rai, so Divasradei, Vidivachol Asar Basar, Yelohim Uchoin, Shlomo Rabbo, Chinav Christov Rachamim, Chayin Arichin, Uzair Richei, Ufurkanom, in Kodom, Avoin, Vishmael Arov, Ramen, Yehei, Shlomo Rabbo, Min Shemayo, Chaim Zevolim, Vakol Yisrael, Ramen. Shalom b'may mavu brachmu v'asher shalom aleinu v'al Yisrael b'may. A big thank you has to go to Rabbi Grossman, who took a lot of the Mishnayos, a lot of the harder Mishnayos, and the Mishnayos paper, everyone, for the art site.
11 months.
Yeah. What? Oh.
Two daughters come up, and then they should do the next course. Then Rabbi Aris, should be.
Okay, fine.
I think they should. I think they should go first. We'll give them a heads up. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I'll tell them.
Good evening. First of all, we'd like to thank all who participated in the Suda and preparing it, all the people that cooked and set up. In particular, Rabbi and Mrs. Kipper spent a lot of effort in putting this together, and it's very, very appreciated. We gather tonight for Sheloshim to remember a very good friend of ours, Mr. Herschel Zoberg. Mr. Zoberg meant a lot, meant many different things to many different people. He was a very dynamic personality. To some, he was a father, he was a friend, he was a chavrusa, he was a talmid, he was a husband, he was helped with computer programming to all whoever needed. He was a confidant, a masmid, he meant a lot to many different people, and as a neighbor for close to 7 years, we got to know him over the course of time. To me, he was a hero. And he was a hero because he didn't become frum early on in life when he was young and impressionable. He was older, more mature, and at that point he made a decision to change, to become frum. But with all the fierceness of his personality, with all the confidence, and he was, he was to us he was an example of what we call a am kshei oiref. Someone who the Jewish people was a am kshei oiref, was stiff-necked. But at that age, to make such a dramatic change in life, in the course of life, to accept a whole new way of living, and to be so fiercely dedicated to it, that's why he was our hero. Also, the reason why he was such a he's so loved by so many people. Look around the room, you see the difference that he made in so many people's lives, was because he was so non-judgmental, but yet so sure in what he knew was to be true and to be right. We had a very good relationship I had many opportunities to learn with him. The thing that stands out most was the Shabbos afternoon shir that we had every week in the house. It was week after week. I think it went on for close to 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that. And it was, to him it was a highlight, but to us it was also a highlight. The amount that the shir made such a he was so happy with having the shir in his home, and the joy that he had that the Torah was being learned and studied in his home was something that was exciting to see every week. We were able to well, many times I would come into the house for a coffee. I would call him up and say, "Are you available for a coffee?" We used to come over. I used to come and learn some Mesilas Yesharim with him over coffee, and then the time that he spent learning. And then I would come in and he would tell me, "Oh, I just learned a new chiddush. I just learned a new halacha from Rabbi Feinstein, or from Rabbi Vishnevsky," and every new halacha was such a joy for him. You were able to see he personified the pasuk Pekudei Hashem Yishar Misamchei Lev, that the Torah is a joy, and knowing him and seeing how studying Torah transformed him into being the best version of himself was a tremendous lesson to all of us who got to know him, to the families on Atrium, to the families that would frequent the house every Friday night. We would come say Good Shabbos. It was a treat for us to come, and we'll miss him very much. Just one more thought. in this week's Parsha, there's a mitzvah of Meiser Sheni. The mitzvah of Meiser Sheni is after, when a person has a crop, and he gives the Truma to the Kohen, Meiser Rishon goes to the Levi, and then Meiser Sheni, the mitzvah is, you don't have to give it away, but you have to bring that part of the produce to Yerushalayim and eat it in Yerushalayim. If someone had a lot of produce, they couldn't bring it, so they were able to change it for money, for its value. Go to Yerushalayim, and you would have to spend the money on food and in Yerushalayim and eat there. If someone had a lot, it would take a lot of time. It would take a lot of time. We would have to stay in Yerushalayim. And the Mefarshim say the pasuk says that the mitzvah of Meiser Sheni is L'man Yilmadu Asiras Hashem. And the Mefarshim explain that when a person goes to Yerushalayim and he's forced to spend time in Yerushalayim, next to the Beis Hamikdash, to see the Kehanim, to see the Leviim, to spend time in a city where the primary focus was the service of Hashem. The primary focus is to learn Torah, to become closer to Hashem. It would transform a person. Life is full of challenges, we get busy with our day-to-day life, but when we have to take a forced vacation to Yerushalayim and spend time there, we actually saw what mattered. We saw a Jew was able to experience people that dedicated their lives completely to Torah, and the mitzvah is to learn and to understand and appreciate what really matters in life. Knowing Mr. Zoberg, he was I felt when coming in contact with him, observing his midos, observing his demeanor with dealing with people, and his commitment to Torah, he elevated us. He elevated us. He brought out the best of us. He was mechayev us. He obligated us to live a little higher, a little finer, and it should be a schus. All the mishnayos that we learned for his neshama, it should be a schus to his neshama and to his family. Call upon his daughter Erica to say a few words.
So my sister and I collaborated this speech together. Unfortunately, she found out that she wasn't able to attend at the last minute. She wishes she could be here, and these words are from both of us. We have heard so many stories about my father in these past few weeks. He hadn't realized how much he meant to so many people, helping them in so many different ways. This is not surprising, because this is the kind of man our father was. He was never the type to talk about himself or what he did for others, and the things that he himself enjoyed most and was passionate about, he always wanted to share. An example of this was our father's great appreciation for food, certainly no secret. Growing up, his spontaneous nature created fond memories for us, such as spur-of-the-moment trips into New York for ices on a school night. This is how he took something he enjoyed and turned it into something more. He would use his love of food as a way to elevate his Shabbat dinners, where a trip to pick up prime rib became an opportunity to schmooze and share a vort. Barbecuing hamburgers was a way to bring friends together to socialize. Hot dogs and peppers were delicious, but they were secondary to learning Torah with friends. We all know our dad had the best sense of humor. The way his smiling face would light up when he saw us was contagious, and we're not the only ones who felt this way. His excitement to share something that made him happy was apparent. Whether it was a pun or joke he would email, sending out wishes for a good Shabbos to so many, or a pending snowstorm that he would tell us about more than a week ahead of time, or videos of his grandkids playing in the snow he would insist to send him immediately. This is all part of his chesed, his kindness, never wanting to keep something good to himself. His grandchildren brought him so much joy. Rosalind, Esther, Nathan, Michelle, Eliana, Raquel, and Daniel loved their pop-pop as much as he loved them. Each one had their own special bond with them. When Daniel would call our father to read him a new pasuk he learned from his Rebbe, you could feel my father kvelling over the phone. When our dad got Nathan his first tefillin and watched as he became a bar mitzvah, he was so proud. His grandchildren brought him so much nachas, and they were so blessed to have those memories. This was only part of what made him so special and one of a kind. He was able to connect with so many different types of people because he truly cared and appreciated them. It was somewhat of a joke at our house that at any given moment, the person hanging out with our dad in the basement could be anywhere from 15 to 85 years old. He made everyone feel special. He lifted us up when we were down. He kept us laughing when we weren't, and always let us know he was truly happy to spend time with us. When he asked how you were doing, he really wanted to know the answer. He was honest and genuine and loved by so many, whether it was someone he knew for a short time or since he was 4 years old. We know how selfless he was. There were always computers piled up, waiting to be fixed for friends, whether for the Chafetz Chaim office, Beis Yaakov, Torah Links, or JLC. He was always eager to lend his gift for fixing things and his extensive computer knowledge in order to help others. Then there were the minion lists, printed out and highlighted in so many colors, so that when he made his calls, he knew who the regulars were and who might need some convincing. My sister and I always knew that he sat down at the kitchen table with a phone in that list. It was serious business, and he was on a mission. But then there were also the time when we were young, when our neighbor called in the middle of the night with an emergency. Without hesitation, our dad ran next door, carried the person to his car, drove him to the hospital, saved their life. He didn't advertise this, of course. No one knew of this incident except for us, but he was the one you called because you knew you could rely on him. As we remember our father and his journey along the path of Torah and learning, we also know he was not alone. This journey, as with all things, was one he and our mother took together. They would have been married 50 years next week, and my sister and I know they would have been just as happy and in love if Hashem had given them 50 more. Our parents showed us how to love and be loved and how to be happy in this life. We are so grateful to have had the opportunity to make them proud. We have always had a close bond with our dad. His loss is felt in the biggest and smallest ways every single day. By emulating his love for life, for Torah and learning, for his family and friends, and by letting his wisdom, kindness, and humility inspire us, we honor him. We thank all of you who have shared your memories of our father with us. We are deeply grateful for the outpouring of love, kindness, and support you have shown us. Thank you to our family. You are always there when we need you, without hesitation. Thank you to the Union Hill Synagogue and Monmouth Torah Links communities, who have always treated our parents as if they were family. We give a heartfelt thank you to the JLC community, who were instrumental in our father's journey towards finding truth. And thank you to Rabbi Safran for your warmth and wisdom when learning Torah with our father and always inspiring him to achieve. And to Rabbi Vishnevsky, you helped our father discover the beauty of being Jewish and set him along the path to building his eternity. It is with your guidance that he was able to become the best version of himself in this life, and as a result, elevate his neshama in the next. May his memory always be for a blessing.
This should get them food first. So keep it early on. We should speak at the end of the first course if you can. Is he here?
Yeah.
How you doing, Gigi?
Yes. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, close.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very good.
No, but here.
All set.
No. For the art site, if you want. If you want for the art site.
Call upon Rabbi Aretz, the rabbi of Mammoth Torlink, to share with us some words of memory.
Thank you so much. Bershus, permission of all the Chashva, Tebet Chachamim, Rabbonim, and Bershus, permission of Rav Hershel's unbelievable, wonderful family. There's a beautiful letter that was written by a famous rabbinic figure, Rabbi Zundel, Zundel of Salant. He wrote this letter from Jerusalem to his son who was traveling with his daughter, with his sister, Rabbi Zundel's daughter. Seemingly, this young lady needed medical treatment, and Rabbi Zundel of Salant's son had to travel all over the world to get his sister the proper medical treatment. And there's a very beautiful, powerful letters that are written by Rabbi Zundel of Salant to his son, encouraging him, telling him, be strong, telling him what a big mitzvah he's doing despite all the Torah study he is not able to do because of this trip. It's a very beautiful, powerful letter in many, many ways, including the dedication to his sister, the powerful words of Rabbi Zundel of Salant. It's a powerful letter in many ways, and I'd just like to focus on one or 2 points in this letter, where he's encouraging his son, who was very dedicated to his sister. However, it was getting frustrating. He had delays on the way. He didn't have money for it, etc. In this letter, he tells him, don't worry. Don't worry. Wherever you are, even if you get delayed, kol akav l'toiva. Anytime you're getting delayed, it's for the good. Think about that next time you're in traffic. You're getting delayed? It's for the good. It's meant to be. Then he has a very powerful, very, very powerful words. He says, you should know, you should always think about that everything is from heaven. For every second, in any moment, where you're supposed to be was decreed from heaven. More than that, he says, with which people that you end up being bitzabsa, as accompanied by along the road, that too was decreed by heaven. And he goes on and says, I was told by Tzvi Yanover that one time the great Chaim of Volozhin went with his sons-in-law, Mordechai and Tzvi, and at midnight they stopped in a certain inn. And the Chaim told them, you should know that from the time of Adam Arishon, from the time of Adam, it was decreed that for this exact moment, you will be in this exact place, with this exact people, and therefore it was meant to be. So Zoberg was telling his son, even though you don't want to be there, you want to help your sister, but you'd rather be home, realize that where you are is where you're supposed to be. Besides many other powerful lessons in the letter. So I want to say 2 points over here. It seems to be that it's decreed from here, not only where you're supposed to be, but who your friends are, who accompanies you upon the road. And the Gemara in Brachos and elsewhere talks about Kizek al Adam, that who your friends are, who accompanies somebody is a big deal. So first I want to give just a very general thank you to Reb Hershel for being tzavsa, to be a friend, to be somebody along this road, along the path of life. You meet many people, and along my path in this strange place called Manalapan/Marlboro, very distant from the hometown of Lakewood and Brooklyn and places like that, that I was able to have a friend. First and foremost, I would like to say Hershel was a real, true, and dear friend. As many people remember, that any time I walked into the JLC, and I remember those lists. I remember those lists big time. Those struggle over those lists. Oh boy, that was fun. Any time I walked into JLC, he had for me, waiting right back there, this cup of coffee, this perfect cup of coffee. By the way, I would like to complain to the community, since of Hershel, nobody has made me a cup of coffee like that. Please, I'm going to start that again. But I don't believe Rabbi Braun that he went to Mr. Sharm at all. I believe it was only for the coffee, but that's what I'm thinking. The perfect cup of coffee, and he used to wrap it in this way, this wrapping of the coffee to make it stay exactly warm, and it was perfect. So when I'm waiting for me to hand it to me, and I got here, it would be over the bookcase over there. One day I remember that if he couldn't make the coffee, he insisted I come to his house afterwards to make sure that I get the coffee. He wouldn't go up and want to steal the coffee from me. Coffee is just one thing. I have yet found out that he texts many people Erev Shabbos texts, but I once in a while, just to entertain myself, I go read through his texts, his Erev Shabbos texts. They seem to be individualized. I don't know, because he's making these, but really they're funny, they're corny, they are corny, but they're full of warmth and friendship and encouragement and telling me, I miss you, can't wait to get back together again. So first and foremost, I want to say that Hershel, a chaver toiv, a good friend, especially my first days over here in Marlboro, Manalapan, it's a very special thing, and I'll be forever grateful for his friendship, plain and simple, for his friendship with tzavsa, to walk along life with people that are pleasant and enjoyable. That's first and foremost. That's the gratitude I have to a very special individual. Second of all, it's decreed every person, it says over here, where you're going to be, exactly where. That means some people, it's decreed they grow up in Williamsburg or Muncie or Passaic or Teaneck, and some people, it's decreed that they end up, they're supposed to be in Manalapan. That's where they're supposed to be. The Kabbalah and the Kabbalists teach us that Jews have to be in every place of the world to take up and uplift the sparks of holiness that are in every place. It was decreed that Reb Hershel, I used to call him Reb Hershel Manalapaner, Reb Hershel was decreed that he should be in Manalapan, because the reason that we're in any place, all of us, what's our job in life is to mekadesh Shem Shemayim, to sanctify God's name and sanctify the place that you are. You know, if you're in other places with larger Jewish communities, maybe there are other people who are able to pick up the sparks of holiness, other people who can mekadesh Shem Shemayim. But the less God presence, less Torah and mitzvahs around the place, the more opportunity, the more obligation it is for the people there to uplift the place. To me, like people will come. Reb Herschel passed away. I mean, Menal should have a very long but like something died in the community because he was the Kiddush Hashem, the sanctification of God's name in this community. His dedication, he was able to show that you could be a Menalapan and you could be dedicated to Torah and to mitzvos on a high level. Remember when he finished learning the Daf Yomi, he started Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud. I mean, who does that? A person who is dedicated to Torah and to Tefillah and to mitzvos and to Chesed, wherever you are, any place, in any circumstance. So when God decreed that you are in a place, sometimes we ourselves feel, let me get out of here. I don't belong here. It's hard here. It's difficult here. And sometimes in places like, Manalpan and Marlborough, which has been decreed by God, but every shul has 9 people for a minyan, so we all fight for the 10th. That's been decreed by heaven. But you could be the way to Mekadesh Shem Shemayim, to sanctify God's name. Herschel taught us, he taught me, that what it means to be a Jew who takes responsibility to sanctify God's name and uplift God's name in every place, in every circumstance. Taught me a lesson that if I don't feel comfortable where I am, something's hard sometimes, Herschel could do it, there's no reason that I can't do it. There's no reason that we can't do it. Herschel leaves a legacy of many, many things. I would like to focus on the legacy of true friendship, a true friend, which is a very rare and precious thing. And I thank him for that. And a legacy that we all can learn, that it's our job in life to be Kadesh Shem Shemayim, to bring godliness into the world, bring sanctity into the world, Torah and holiness and mitzvah and chesed into the world. Herschel did that. He made Menalpan a more holy place, and we have the responsibility to follow in his ways, wherever we are, whatever circumstances, to continue to be Kadesh Shem Shemayim. Yehi Zechrei Baruch. May his memory be for a blessing, and we should all follow in his beautiful, beautiful ways. Thank you so much.
Okay, before we hear from the from the final speaker, Rabbi Vishnevsky, just want to give a little introduction. First of all, it's a real pleasure to have you back after a couple of years, and brings back the memories of the good old days. But I think it's appropriate to say that not far from here there's a place that there's competition and games and people drink. It's called the house that Ruth built, I think, right? I think it's appropriate to say that the shul that we stand in today, the shul that has continued with minyanim, with Torah, shiurim, with chavrusis, for this long, in part, can be called the house that Herschel built. I think there's many others that made it happen who are here tonight, Baruch Hashem, but Herschel was definitely one of the founders, the builders, and one of the main people that inspired the continued growth of the local community, of every single one of us to participate on a bigger level, to daven more, to learn more, and Rabbi Vishnevsky was the catalyst for this, and we'll be zeicha to hear some words from Rabbi Vishnevsky.
It's been a little while since I've been here, 5.5 years, and feels good to be back. I just want to mention one very important thing Rabbi Aretz left out, that the true fame of Herschel is not the coffee, Rabbi. It's the burgers. Okay? And if you're really zeicha l'kach, it's the steaks. But that's only a very select group that was zeicha to eat one of the steaks. Okay, so I hope you'll mind me correcting you, Zayt Mer Moichel, I know you have a personal connection to the coffee. I don't drink coffee. I can't do the yachid to it. Okay, number one. Number two, when I came up with the idea to make a siyum, Lilay Nishmas Herschel, at the Sheloshim, and Yirtzeh Hashem will have another siyum at the yard site, I thought originally we should do it in his house, in your house. That was a place where I gave a shiur in Manalapan, which was a covert op shiur. Many of you didn't even know. But it was a group of people who I gave a shiur for many, many years until the pandemic came in Judy and Herschel's house. And their home on Atrium, it was not a regular home. It was a home that was a Makom Kaddish, like a shul. There was so much Torah being learned over there. I think many shuls don't have that much Torah being learned in them. But then I realized, because I remember Judy telling me that the main place that he parked himself in his house was in the basement, and very often he was down there for tremendous amounts of time with unknown individuals fixing computers and helping them with the graphics for flyers and all kinds of things, all kinds of different organizations. And that's where Herschel parked himself. That's where he lived, in his basement, doing things for the Klal Yisrael. But it's not true. He parked and lived here, I think, more than at home. And I don't think that's an exaggeration. He was Rosh V'Rishon L'Chol Davar Shebekdusha. If anything good was going on, he was the first one there, and he opened up. He would come in the morning. He and some other special individuals would come very early to learn long before davening, hours and hours before davening many times. And he was always the first one there to shear. I remember at 701 Tennant Road, before we came over here, 701 Tennant Road, I used to come sometimes early to prepare. And I had to come like 3 hours early to get there before him. I'm not exaggerating. He was always there first. This was his home. This was his mainstay. The place that we're sitting in. He sat there in the back, in the corner. And the Mesiras Nefesh that he had. When you say Mesiras Nefesh, it's a word that's thrown around a lot. It means dedication, or a person giving himself over completely to something. People use that word, it became cliche, and it doesn't mean much. With him, it was literal. The minyanim, who would do what he did? I mean, he probably needed like 3 shrinks to be able to recover from the week's minyan calls, to just calm him down. But he didn't get excited, though. Sometimes he was disappointed. But what he did with those minyanim, Laila v'yayin, I mean, it's unbelievable. It was unbelievable. The whole that he was, and nobody asked him to do it. He did it himself. That's the godless of this person. He didn't need to be asked. I'll give you another example of the Mesiras Nefesh. I had this happen with 2 different people over my many years involved in Kiruv or Rabbanis, whatever, over a quarter of a century. 2 people this happened with. They had a test with Shabbos. They realized it's very important that Jews should not work on Shabbos, and had jobs where they had a problem. Usually it was Friday afternoon. One fellow was a dentist, and I don't think any of you know him. He said, Saturday's my busiest day. I said, your parnasa is from God. If God gives you parnasa, enough money to live on, from you to get on Saturday, you can give it to you on Sunday too, pal. Why don't you try opening on Sunday? Well, he did open on Sunday, and he was busier than he was on Saturday. Okay, that was one. And the other one was Herschel. Now, those people who know that Herschel and Judy used to travel to Newark, New Jersey. Is that the right? Yeah. And they worked in a company where the boss wasn't one of these like laid back, chilled out kind of guys. He was the complete polar opposite. Is that an exaggeration? No. Okay. Maybe a lot on the high strung side. And if you rubbed him the wrong way, it wasn't good. And he didn't want to get him upset. He said, Rabbi, I can't, this guy is like, I can't ask him to take off early on Fridays. And it was negay him and Judy, it was both of them. So I said, Herschel, told him the same thing. Parnasa is from God. Let you do what you need to do, and let God do His stuff. You go and ask Him to be able to leave early on Friday afternoons. I had to take 2 cars because Judy came home early in order to cook for Shabbos, and Herschel came home a few hours later. And the boss did something that was completely uncharacteristic. It was like the Tsar doing something showing he loves Jews, you know? Like there was he wasn't anti-Semitic, the boss was a Jewish guy, but for him to say on the spot, no problem, that's exactly what he did. He said, no problem, Herschel. Herschel he didn't know what happened to the guy, right? He almost fell off his chair, almost had heart palpitations. But it took guts. It took guts to make that request. He did not shy, did not run from difficulties. If something was tough, the tough got going. I don't even know, only in heaven do they know, how many people came to Minyanim, how many people came to daven, and how many people came to learn as a result of him, in his sweet way, urging them to come to daven. There must be thousands of tefillas, people daven, came to shul because of this man. And people are, sometimes fundraising is difficult because you're afraid to ask somebody for money. Most people, they're a little inhibited to ask somebody to come to minyan. It's not such an easy thing to do. Rabbi Arch, you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes you got to do it. I remember at the end, we decided to make in the summer a mincha and minyan for Mincha and Meyer together. And Herschel was just, all his options were out, There weren't any more options. I said, don't worry. I'm going to go to a certain neighborhood in Manalapan. You just get 9 guys, okay? He got the 9. I'll get the 10th guy. I got in the old battle tank, the car, what's the name of that? What company was that? The Crown Victoria, whatever it was called. That thing, it was like a tank. So I drove that thing to somebody's house. It was a neighborhood of Sephardic Jews. Very traditional. I knocked on the door, and every day I would go to another guy. They all lived in a row, a whole bunch of them. Moroccan Jews. They love Yiddishkeit. They're very traditional. I said, I have 9 guys. I need a 10th guy for minyan. Now, Moroccan's not going to say, he's not going to say I can't come. So I got in the car, I knocked on the door, I brought back a guy. He was so relieved. But the phone calls and the pressure, it was self-inflicted pressure. Nobody asked him to do it. Herschel was my personal chauffeur. I used to go on fundraising trips, and even though some people are very talented and like to take risks, like taking turns in 2 wheels, some people like to text while they're driving the whole time, which is not the safest thing in the world. I didn't like to do that, so Herschel would drive me. I would go fundraising in Lakewood. Used to, it was with Slichas and El. I would go there, and he would drive, and I would be texting, and he had no. It wasn't even a shy. There was no hesitancy when I told him I needed someone to drive me. I remember Dov Tarnoff. Many of you know him, right? Dov Tarnoff's father was Nifter, and the Levaya ended up on Purim. Rabbi Aretz, I don't think you ever had a Purim like this one. It's a competition. A Friday Purim. The Levaya was on Friday morning. Okay, and I still live in Lakewood. I had 60 people waiting for me at my Purim Suda at 12 o'clock, 11:30 in the morning. And we got very early, and I laned the Megillah. Dov Tarnoff didn't hear the Megillah. So I had to lane the Megillah after the whole Levaya was over. I had to lane the Megillah in the car on the way back to Lakewood. And guess who the driver was? Herschel. Anything good, he was the first man there. Schlepping others with him. The Paroiches in the shul. I remember Moshe Feinstein used to say, you see tissue boxes in a shul. They didn't get that by themselves. Somebody put them out. You know how the Paroiches guy was changed every year? Herschel changed the Paroiches. I used to come into shul, all of a sudden everything's white. Nobody asked him. I was better at polishing silver than he was. Don't tell anybody I polished the silver. He would take it out and leave it on the table for me, and I used to polish the silver, but he would have it all ready for me. Everything was done and taken care of. He marked up the machzorim for Yom Naroyim with the pages for the Chaz, and for me, made a rabbi's edition. I mean, everything he did. There wasn't anything that he wouldn't do. I can't recall anything that he wouldn't do. There's a book about a famous rabbi, Rabbi Meir Schuster. Has anybody ever heard of him? He was the man at the Western Wall. He used to tap people on the... I'll tell you a funny story. I hope everybody's finished eating. Rabbi Schuster used to tap people at the Western Wall on the shoulder. Say, "Are you Jewish? Would you like to see yeshiva?" So he would bring them up to Eish Torah or take them other places. Tens of thousands of people. Tens of thousands. This is for decades. There must be, for sure, tens of thousands of people who are affected by him, who didn't know anything about Yiddishkeit. An unbelievable person. One time there was somebody who was at the Western Wall, and this guy didn't take Yiddishkeit, so he didn't really like Yiddishkeit too much. So he's standing there by the Western Wall, and they used to have some, if you're old enough, I think they don't have it at the Western Wall now, they have regular yarmulkes, but they used to have these cardboard yarmulkes that were stapled together. Anybody remember that? Remember that? And maybe they hadn't because they wouldn't blow away in the wind so much, whatever. So this guy standing by the Western Wall, and they give him a paper yarmulke to put on. He takes the yarmulke and he throws it down on the floor. Second later, literally a split second later, the pigeons go on a bombing raid. Direct hit. Direct hit. Right after that happens, Rabbi Schuster walks over to him and says, "Would you like to see a yeshiva?" He changed his mind real fast. He said, "God, I give up." Do you know that Rabbi Meir Schuster was a very quiet person? He was, I even used the word, he was socially off. He had trouble having a conversation with a stranger. He couldn't say hello to people. And this is a man, tens of thousands of people, he said a lot more than hello to them. What is the lesson? There's a book, it's called A Tap on the Shoulder. Everybody should buy it. It's an amazing book about his life. The thing that you learn from him is that a person is not mugbal. A person is not limited to what you feel comfortable with. We should get that out of our heads. Comfort zone has no place for a Jew. That's good for everybody else, not for us. Avram Avinu is called the first Jew because he was Avram Ivri. He was a nonconformist. Everybody else was on the other side and he was on a different side of the river. He didn't conform. I know a boy who went to Catholic school as a young boy. He was a Jewish boy. And he didn't want to go to church. So he said, "Don't you want to be like everybody else?" He said, "No, I don't want to be like everybody else." And that started him on the path to end up becoming an observant Jew. Because he realized, I don't want to be like them. I care about what's right, not what's convenient. That is Herschel. The Metzias of the Mensch. He cared about what was right. He did not care about what was easy or convenient. It was not easy making those minion phone calls. It wasn't easy to do so many things that he did. It didn't make any difference. And I would like to share with you, very briefly, and then I'm going to finish up. There's, in Parshas Kisava, the Torah says, "Cursed is the person who does not uphold these words of Torah to do them, to fulfill them." And it says on the opposite side, "Blessed is the person who upholds the words of the Torah." What does that mean, uphold the words of the Torah? Just say, you fulfill the mitzvahs, the commandments. What does that mean? So the Ramban here, very famous Ramban, he quotes something from the Talmud Yerushalmi. The Talmud says, Yoshiyahu was the king of Yehuda at the end of the first temple, about 30 years before the destruction of the first temple. And things were in shambles spiritually amongst the Jews. Things weren't doing well. And this Yoshiyahu HaMelech grew up in a house where there was idolatry, and he came to the realization it's nonsense, and he said, it's my job to uphold and make sure that things are put in the right place. And then the Gemara continues. Amar Rebbe Asi, B'Shem Rebbe Tanchum Barchia, Lamad Velime, you learned and you taught. V'Shomar V'Yasa, and you were careful not to violate any precepts, and you did what you're supposed to do. V'Yasipot B'Yadei Lahachzik, and you had the ability to strengthen other people. V'Lo Yachzik, and he didn't strengthen them. Harei B'Chlal you're cursed. That's strong language. I'm a perfect tzaddik. I don't do anything wrong. I do it all right. But I see other Jews who could use a little bit of chizik, they can become a little bit better, and I say, I don't care about them, it's about me. You're cursed for that. Because you're not doing it for God. If you cared about God's honor, it would pain you when you see people doing bad things. You want the world to be a good place, not just you to be a good person. And the opposite is true, that a person who doesn't sit by the wayside and he sees things need to be fixed up and he does something, he's blessed by God. B'yirtzeh Hashem will have, everyone will adhere and listen and get motivated and we'll have a good blessed year. And it should be a source for Herschel's neshama.